welcome to the Saturday Night Live Afterparty. This week, we'll be discussing Season 46, Episode 5 of SNL with host John Mulaney and musical guest The Strokes. I'm Katherine Coleman, and I'm joined this week by Steve Finn and John Murray. If you'd like to connect with any of us, you can do so at snlpodcast.com. All right, here we go. Okay, Mulaney's back for a fourth time. We got a fresh monologue, another musical installment, and hopefully our last election material for the season.
Last pre-election material. I don't think it's the last we will hear of the election goings on. But we've certainly got a capable host lined up for next week to hopefully, usher us into whatever this new era of U.S. history will be. Dave Chappelle is back, as with tradition.
Yeah, I'm excited about it. But before we get into that, you want to cover thank our patrons?
Sure. I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was getting ahead of us here.
No, you're good.
I want to thank Dave Hassar from the glorious capital of Canada, Ottawa, Ontario, and Chelsea from California, 2 new patrons. We're so happy to have them on board. And just a reminder to anyone that would like to check out our full-length coverage, you can save 10% on Patreon if you choose to pay annually. Otherwise, you get our full video coverage for $4 a month, which I think is a steal. If you agree, please head over to Patreon, support us, and then you can get our coverage, which is clocking in right now around an hour 20 an episode. So there's plenty of content to be had for anyone that would love to join us on Patreon or Subscribestar.
Yeah, we got lots to say, and we'd love to have you hear it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So let's get into that news item that we sort of hit on then. Our next week's post-election episode will be hosted by Dave Chappelle. He hosted in 2016 after the election, and so I guess they thought it worked out really well, huh?
Yeah, he's kind of a steady hand. And Lauren loves his tradition, right? So
right.
He's just, the go-to post-election guy now. And I think it feels right. Like it seems like, who else are you going to book? And again, capable comedian that can carry a good chunk of the show that helps them to ease up on some of the production weight of the show. Mm-hmm. So I am more than happy to stick with capable seasoned stand-up hosts because they've been doing okay so far.
Absolutely. I'm thrilled with Dave Chappelle. I think he's a good booking because no matter which way the election goes, he'll have something pretty smart to say about it, and he'll be able to make you laugh. Like, he's very reliable in that way.
Absolutely.
Just like he was in 2016. So
I just hope it doesn't take 4 years for him to host every time now, because I would like to see that happen a little more frequently, because I'm a big Dave fan. But I get it. It's a good place to put him. They hired him to host the Victory Lap episode that turned out to not be that. And it seems like it was a good fit either way, because I think he did a pretty good job reacting to the unexpected outcome of the last election. I would like to know who's going to be musical guest.
Yes.
I was wondering about that. I'm wondering if they're holding off on that because they don't know if they want to queue up something celebratory or something to help their audience mourn. So maybe they're just going to hold back on that until they know what kind of show they're producing. But yeah, that's very interesting. It's very rare that we don't have both the musical guest and host lined up 1 week, before the show. So
right.
Things are crazy in 2020, right? Everyone's just kind of just figuring out as they go. But that is interesting. So I wonder if they don't want to be quite as gung ho like they were with the last show, where A Tribe Called Quest was pretty upbeat and fun for a show that not a lot of people felt like laughing along with. So yeah, maybe they've learned some lessons from 4 years ago.
Interesting. Well, let's get into the show. So up first, we got a spooky election week story from Joe Biden with cameos from Jim Carrey and Maya Rudolph. Steve, did this one work for you?
I thought it was a fun time. I'm a fan of Poe's work, so it's nice to see him referenced. It was, I don't know. I don't feel like the whole rhythm of the delivery was working for me because they kept falling out of it to do a little bit in between, and I don't think they ever really hit an actual rhythm with the rhyme scheme and the poetry uh that the Raven is known for. So
Yeah.
yeah, that's a minor complaint though, because it was a fun time. It was nice to have visits from some of our favorite characterizations, and yeah, we got Hillary, which is kind of fun. I think Kate had a really good time this whole episode, and she started strong with this. And it was nice to see Jim get to do a little bit of what he does with Joe Biden without having to share the stage with Alec.
I think that's a fair critique about how they didn't quite catch the rhythm because there would be someone coming in or they'd have to pause for, an applause break. So it didn't bother me too much. The one thing that bothered me about that, though, is that I really wanted Live from New York at Saturday night to fit the rhyme scheme, and it didn't. That would have just been a nice little touch to add on that I would have appreciated. But that said, I really liked this cold open. It was creative. It wasn't a rehash of a news story, right? I went in to this week thinking we were probably going to get uh, dueling campaign rallies, because that was really the bigger things in the news later in the week. And so when this started, I was like, oh, this is going to be a really creative thing. It's a little bit more inspired. And it was short. It was only 7 minutes, and I'm here for it. So this one was a win for me for sure.
Yeah. I wasn't super hot on it. It felt pretty easy. Like a lot of the jokes seemed super obvious. Like you guys already mentioned, it wasn't just that they interrupted the reciting of the Raven for all these little walk-ons and applause breaks and stuff. Um, it was also just that the cuts weren't really tight. So there was just, that little like, okay, the camera cuts, the person doesn't quite start talking right away, and it just throws off the rhythm. So there was a little bit of clunkiness that way. And I thought if they were going to do the Raven, they had to either stay in that mode rather than sort of be a little loose when people come on and stop it, um, for them to do their entrance and whatever gag they're going to offer. Just because you forget very quickly that that's even the underlying goof of all this, that he's reciting the Raven, that everyone's supposed to be kind of finishing the lines of the Raven. It was really loose that way. And because of that, it was like a hindrance on the comedy they could have built because they were trying to do the Raven, but because they didn't go all in on it, it was just kind of tepid and a little, loose and awkward. So, nice try. Like, I think that it was a fun enough thing to find something macabre to try and hang a political cold open on, but I didn't find it exceptionally funny, and it just felt like they were just pulling in all the same kind of tired stuff that we've seen a lot of. Even bringing in Hillary, we haven't seen her in a while, but she didn't bring anything new to the stage.
Right.
And so I felt like there was a lot of missed opportunities. If they were going to revisit these characters, I would have liked to see something a little more inspired. So I didn't think this was fantastic personally.
All right. Well, mixed reviews on the cold open, but let's get into the monologue. John Mulaney reassures us that post-election slumber parties will still be problematic. Steve, did this monologue work for you?
Absolutely. It had all of the Mulaneyisms that we've come to know and love. And I'm seeing a bit of a streak in monologue fibs. We had first black female host with Issa Rae, which is obviously not true. And now we have John Mulaney claiming that 4 times is the most anyone's ever hosted.
My husband actually said, "Is it really?" And I was like,
oh my God.
No.
Oh my God. Okay. That's cute. This was so good. And I'm happy to say that every time I thought it was over, there was a little bit more. Like, this monologue went on for a little bit and I didn't mind. It didn't feel too long. I knew it was going on for a while, but I was having so much fun. I did not mind at all.
Yeah, so like some of the other stand-ups. I think particularly with Chris Rock, we were sort of batting around, or we may be seeing some rougher material because they're not able to test it out. But with Mulaney, this felt pretty smooth. This felt pretty polished. I think he has tried it out a little bit at some socially distanced things, but I mean, this felt pretty top form Mulaney. I really enjoyed it, particularly the joke about grandma's not voting. That's an ongoing battle in my family, so I felt that. And like the Nazi joke, I thought was particularly very good. I thought that was really hilarious. The sleepover thing rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just because of the message there was that voting doesn't matter, and I think that's a bad message to be sending. But at the end of the day, I don't think Mulaney's monologue is really going to be influencing in huge numbers, so I'm okay with it. But I didn't love that part. So
He was also telling people to ruin their ballots. So.
Yes, he was. It was questionable at a few parts, but overall, I thought it was a very great monologue.
Now, Catherine.
Yes.
I don't think SNL has ever veered closer to doing a 90-minute advertisement for the Democratic ticket than they did.
This is true.
Tonight. So I don't know if we should be sweating it that Mulaney had the audacity to goof on voting rather than, go all in on the social messaging, which we got a heck of a lot of. Yeah, I think we got our fill. At least that's how I was feeling. So I was happy that he played both sides of that a little bit. Like when he was doing his whole, there's this one old guy and then there's this other old guy and you got to pick which old guy you like the best.
That part was funny, yeah.
And that's, like that's a fun take on the whole silliness of elections, especially in this situation where you have two guys that from a distance, they don't pass the squint test as far as one being particularly better than the other. One is just slightly more orange. So it was kind of fun that he kind of took that approach of like, they're just old white guys that are just going to do the same stupidity that we've had forever. So like, let's not get all worked up. I thought that's kind of a fun take that you don't hear much of because people are so impassioned that they wouldn't want to do something down the middle. They feel a need to advocate for their side. So the fact that he didn't, at least at that point, I thought was kind of fun. In the Diner Lobster outing that we got tonight, there was, he had something to say about voting there, and we got it, sprinkled in the whole show. So I don't know. I felt like that was kind of refreshing. I liked a take on elections that just pointed out that isn't it all kind of idiotic when you really just step back and look at it? And that's something I could get on board with. But hot take on Mulaney. This was good.
Yeah, I'm willing to let go of the whole thing because taking into account the rest of the episode. But I couldn't let it go enough to not bring it up. So Here we are. All right. Well, let's get into our first sketch then. Cinema Classics airs some never before seen deleted scenes from The Birds. Steve, did you find this installment to be better than the rest?
Oh, for sure. I would be on board with it either way, just because I love to see Reese DeWatt's bad guess of the week, you could call it. This was fun for a lot of reasons. I liked a couple of elements. First of all, John Mulaney's character and his more realistic reaction to all of the events of The Birds. And like, it's fun to call into question, like, how much damage can a bird do, even when it's being an arsehole, like the ones in The Birds from Alfred Hitchcock. But I like the props used in this even more. This is what the real gem of this is, the birds are doing ridiculous things. They're anthropomorphized, and it just gets even more ridiculous the more it goes on. They're carrying turtles. The turtles are carrying sandwiches. It's amazing. I really commend them for being so creative with just the lunacy of it all.
Yeah. I'm a big Cinema Classics fan, so I was happy to see it. I don't think it was quite as good as the last one that Mulaney was in. You know how to whistle, don't you? So it had that kind of going against it, but I thought this was a very fun cinema classics outing. It's definitely one of my favorites. Um, when they were talking about the bullying cycle of the birds to the turtles and the
Right.
turtles to the sandwich, that really got me. I thought they just had some really good lines. Mulaney played the straight man really well, and I was having fun with this one. So it's a win for me. John, what did you like about it?
I liked a lot. My first thought when Cinema Classics title card came on screen is, isn't this typically like back half of the show type of material? Like,
Mhm.
why are we seeing this out of the gate? And then I remembered, oh, if Mulaney's hosting, there is no back half of the show because it's all going to be a big musical number. So that was the first thing that gave away that, yes, they're definitely giving us a fourth outing of our Broadway, New York themed, whatever it is. So that actually was a little deflating. Like I was thinking, okay, so maybe they just don't have much to offer for sketches this week because we're just going all in on Mulaney's greatest hits. But I gotta say, the observation that underpins this one is pretty strong. And I've always kind of felt it myself watching the birds is that it really requires you to um, extend your disbelief or suspend your disbelief a lot more than other thrillers might. Because it's so obvious that there's nothing terribly menacing about a bird, and like, how do you get birded to death? Like that kind of thing. Like the idea that it could ever escalate to what happens in the birds is so ridiculous that I've never been able to really like embrace that movie. So I think it's funny that
Mhm.
someone looked at it and said, "Well, yeah, of course." And if that's what made it onto screen, imagine what was on the cutting room floor, and just go completely absurd with it. Like you guys said, just totally ridiculous, not even attempting at anything cool for production values. Just let's just make this as corny and silly and squarely in 60s cinematic technology as we possibly can. And all of that stuff I thought was working great. And I like this a lot more than I was expecting to be perfectly honest.
All right, let's keep going. Crazy Leg Jimmy, Rubber Band Ronnie, Pity Pat Patricia, and Just Michelle are strolling to the polls. Steve, what won about this?
Hang on, I got to jam out for a bit. Every time that this comes up, I'm going to be singing it in my head. Come on, you guys have been singing this all day. Admit it.
Yes.
Oh, it's an earworm for sure.
Absolutely.
It really
Oh,
is
yes.
catchy.
Doing the dishes, just strolling. Yeah, that will not leave for a while. And, it's welcome because it's a catchy, super fun song. And I had a lot of fun. Now, I'm glad that the song was so enjoyable because other than that, it was a little bit sad. It was a funny take on a not so nice reality about voter suppression. And I found myself thinking, you know, before we even get to the joke, the fact that I see four black singers singing about going to the polls, I already know what the joke is going to be because, this is an issue when it comes to uh uh, you know, certain neighborhoods having polls close early and certain people of certain colors being mysteriously unregistered when they go to vote. This is something that I have read about. And yeah, it's maybe a good thing that we can make something that sheds light on it, but also lightens it up so we can still have a laugh. It kind of makes it easier to swallow. So I think that's really what the use of comedy is when you're talking about things that aren't so right in this world.
Yeah.
So it was a lot of fun, and for what we've been getting from Chris Red when it comes to the musical input, this is another win from him.
Definitely. They nailed this one. Man, what a catchy tune. The 70s aesthetic was great. The costumes, fantastic. The choreography was awesome. This had so much working for it. Just a good time from start to finish. And like you said, they took sort of this serious, sad topic, but managed to make it, funny and light. And I appreciated that. Yeah, I have just no critiques on it. I loved everything about it. The nicknames, the highway was such a great heighten. So Yeah, and then I thought the mask thing was such a nice little button, a way to sort of end the story there in a funny way. So big win for me on this one. John, do you concur?
Yeah, I think you guys said it all. It was well produced. Yeah, it was a smart joke, and they made it funny. And what else can you ask for? Catchy song, fun costumes. They had a nice capper, like you said. So there's really no point for me to just go down a trail on all the little technical things, because the end product was a lot of fun. So thumbs up.
Yep.
Moving on.
Very good. Up next, Ichabod Crane asks the Headless Horseman if he's ever, Steve, how'd you feel about it?
I will say, and this is true. This is a true
I'm
thing.
scared
I'm saying
about
to
where
you.
this is going.
I never even, it never crossed my mind to think about the Headless Horseman and what he could do with his severed head. And like, is this something that everybody's been talking about? Because it just never hit me. And
No, I don't think you're
Definitely never
particularly
occurred to me.
exceptional for not having your mind go there. I think we'd be a little more concerned if it did. Yeah.
okay, good. But yes, so we're talking about, intercourse with a severed head. And that's a very uncomfortable topic, but that's how you make beautiful cringe humor such as this. There's a couple of things that make this work even better. The amount of work that went into the Headless Horseman, making it so convincing, having, Beck in under the arm with the cape and the horse. It all looked so very, I guess, high end when it comes to production. And normally that would mean you take it very seriously and you're trying to, do everything you can to create this macabre imagery that's going to spook the viewer. And it does do that, but for the purpose of making the subject matter of the sketch that much more absurd. Like, you're looking at a very well done Headless Horseman, as they talk about, I mean, using the head for sexual gratification. So that is, that
That's
is
what
the
they were
real,
talking about. Okay.
yeah.
It was
I
too
know they were
subtle.
really
I
dancing
couldn't
around it.
track. Yeah.
I'll let you know what dingus means after we're done recording.
Good.
That might help you. So yeah, it was great. The end rolling credits was probably my biggest laugh. Not the ears, and this was written by Lorne, were two great jokes. And yeah.
Yeah, I think the Lorne button was a very nice touch there. I had a good time with that joke. The rest of this was really good. It was definitely a very unique observation that they were making there. And so, it was fun right off the bat with that. It's hard to keep heightening from that spot. But I think they did a good job of it with how they came in and it heightened with the more and more specific questions about what he could do with it. So I thought that was a good idea, because I definitely, as it started, I was like, oh, where are they going to go now? So I thought they did a good job figuring out how to do that. That said, I wish there had been a few more like active moves with it, but all of those that I can think of probably got vetoed by like NBC standards and practices. So, I get it. Overall, though, another win. So the front half of the show is looking really good to me. John, do you agree?
Well, yeah. I mean, it as uncomfortable a sketch as it is on many levels. It had some very smart details. Like, they go on this little digression about, well, do you think you could make eye contact? And then the one guy's like, why would you want that? Well, maybe an emotional connection. He's like, for me, it's all about power. Like, those little trails that they go down with trying to explore what all they could do with his head is pretty clever writing. I got to give him that. So as much as this wasn't the sketch I wanted to see, like, this isn't anything that, I can totally get on board with, just because it is so weird and, a little, just little dark and a little bizarre, and yeah, it just makes you squirm a little. Interestingly, though, it's funny. By the end of it, I was kind of thinking, like, wait a minute, I didn't hear consent at all offered in this sketch. Like, where's Me Too on this one? And I was thinking, like, I'm not really one that gets offended or, is going to go start a Twitter controversy, but I was thinking, in a weird way, this is kind of a sketch that many would say, crosses the line of one of our current taboos that we're supposed to be very sensitive about. And I know that it's all guys on screen, so it's kind of, a different dynamic, but it did have me thinking, you know what? In a weird way, they kind of they kind of did the Headless Horseman dirty there. So
yeah, they end up
and-
sexually assaulting the Headless Horseman, don't they?
Yes,
Yeah.
and they linger on it, right? In that closing text crawl, right? They really play into the idea that he's basically getting violated nonstop by this Puritan town from here on out, and that's a little dark. So this was a ride. This was definitely a ride.
Absolutely.
All right, well, yeah, well, now that you've ruined that, let's keep going. An inspiring PSA to remind us that New York has not lost its crazy. Steve, what'd you like about this one?
Well, I like the truth to it. There's two parts of New York. There's the New York that you see in all of the tourism ads and all the beautiful whitewashed imagery that provides. And then there's, just living there and seeing everything for what it is. The Times Square mascots, the scalpers, the crazies. And I love it because you can get so specific, like some of the things that they said about Kate's character, how she has an apartment. She prefers to be outside. She's on a 40 floor walk up. It's all so very much, the typical type of I don't know, the excusing of these eccentrics that you see. And it's, I don't know, it was kind of charming. There was no hate towards this crazy old lady. It was just like kind of a love letter to the eccentrics that we share the world with.
Definitely. I love how Mulaney episodes are always very New York centric. That, as a New Yorker, that always pays off for me, and I just find it really funny. But this was a nice, heartwarming yet hilarious thing. You say, Kate, hey, go be a crazy old woman in the park for a few hours and we'll film it. And she nails it because that's Kate's forte, right? So big wins on that. All of the specifics written into this are fantastic. Like Steve, you mentioned the 40th floor walk up. So when she's out, she's out. And I got it. Like I used to live in a 5th floor walk up. It's true. Like if we're out of milk, we're out of milk. Sorry. And then, like, she's not a professor at Columbia because every crazy person I've ever met claims they've taught a class at Columbia. It's like just those little things that you wouldn't necessarily know unless you've lived here and talked to some of these interesting people on the street. So I thought they nailed it, and this was another big win for me. John, did it win for you too?
Yeah, this was fun. Like you guys said, very New York centric. But I think the joke is pretty easy to find, even if you're not a New Yorker.
Yeah.
What can you really say? Like mashing up the super over the top schmaltziness of the PSA with what Kate's doing in the background. That's comedy. That's obvious. Like you're going to get some good laughs out of me that way. And I liked it. This was pretty easy to enjoy. Kate is a cut up. I love it when they do like someone has like such lack of inhibition that they're running around streaking or whatever. They're just lounging out topless. So they have the big blur on them, right? And she's singing. She could care less. Like this is just who she is. I like that they just go to those places with it, and they draw a really complete character about who this crazy woman is without her really ever saying anything to camera. I like it, and yeah, anyone who spent time in New York you've seen this person. You've absolutely
Yeah.
seen this person. I've spent a lot of time with a few of them in the standby line over the years. And it is interesting that, now that there's no standby line, I guess they're just hanging out in the park. So this tracks. I thought this was fun. I enjoyed it. And Kate, this is what Kate does. So how can you not love it?
Kate. Yeah.
Definitely. Well, up next we have the Strokes perform The Adults Are Talking and Bad Decisions. Steve, did you enjoy the Strokes?
Well, I am not a Strokes hater, nor am I a diehard fan that eats up everything that they release. A lot of my enjoyment comes from being at a friend's house and they play the Strokes. I'm like, oh, I like this song. Hey, the Strokes are pretty good. But I don't know, something about them never lets me, it never, inspires me to follow them any more than ever so slightly casually. So I was excited to see the Strokes because, my friends have shown me some pretty cool stuff that they've put out. I'm like, oh, Strokes have some new sounds. They have some new things they do. And then the two songs that they play just sounded like very much run of the mill Strokes. Like, I feel like I've heard those songs before. I know that they're new, but they're just so paint by numbers of what the Strokes does. All I can say is if you like the Strokes, then, here's some more of that.
Fair enough. The thing that you're sort of not liking is actually the thing that I planned on complimenting is the Strokes have such a trademark sound, and I find that kind of admirable in a way. You're right that these are very much songs that I could confuse with any other Strokes song, and that, in a lot of ways is maybe not great, but it's also pretty cool that you can hear a song and immediately say, well, I know who that is. I think that's a unique thing to achieve, so I kind of commend that. And I thought both of these songs were really catchy. I was having a good time with them. The first one had a really fun little drum beat to it that I was enjoying. So yeah, I'm sort of in the same boat that I like the Strokes when I hear the Strokes, but I never go buy the album for whatever reason. So I wasn't like, yeah, the Strokes, but I had a good time with it. So,
Right.
ultimately a win. John, how did you feel about the Strokes?
Um, the Strokes broke out right around when I was 20 years old. So music was still important to me at that point. And for whatever reason, they played Detroit like it seems like it was every weekend for about 3 years between maybe 98 and 2001 or something. And so it was almost a given for a couple years that you were just going to go over to Detroit like every other weekend and go see the Strokes at a little club wherever they're playing, whatever. So I've seen a lot of Strokes in my youth, and I kind of fell off maybe somewhere around 2003, 2004, somewhere in there. And I probably haven't heard a track from them since. So it was interesting that the first song kicks up and I'm like, oh yeah, they've definitely not reinvented themselves. This is the Strokes right here. So it just kind of felt like nothing changed. Like it was super familiar, but it kind of just washed over me in a pleasant way. I was like, oh, this is familiar and this is taking me back. And this is just a sound that is woven into my fabric in a way, because this is what was out when a younger, more passionate John was out actually living a life.
Oh, I would love to see that, John.
Yeah, he does not exist anymore. So there was something very pleasing about that. And then the second song I thought was pretty darn cool. It was a pretty, I think, blatant fusion of Billy Idol meets modern English. Like there was some obvious melodic riffs that they were lifting right from those some quintessential modern English, like I Melt With You. It felt like that was just like the underpinning of the song. So I just like that I feel like I could put my finger on what they were going for with those tracks, and just a lot of fun. So I'm not going to give them super high marks because this didn't break the mold and it didn't just blow the doors off the barn or anything, but this felt pretty darn good. And I got to say, I enjoyed it.
Okay, let's get into Weekend Update. Che and a newly married Colin Johansson discussed the latest election season drama. Steve, did you feel like Weekend Update is continuing to improve?
This was definitely on par, if not a full improvement. It was consistent in its quality for sure. Definitely an angry mob of an audience when it comes to hearing what Trump had to say about doctors and COVID.
That's our president, recently saved by doctors.
So this was yet another outing where they pull off the gloves, comparing the president to serial killers and, speculating on their body count. That's some wild stuff that, before
2020, man.
This is peak 2020. And yeah, it's tough to say that anything has been seen before like this. So I really enjoyed it. Obviously all of Joe's stuff on our murdering president, and Che had some great stuff on the issue of rappers representing the Black community. It's a good thing to point out, because it does seem tone deaf to see all these white politicians like trying to lap up all of this affection from these rappers that people might enjoy their music, but it's almost insulting to think that a whole race of people look to these people as figures for political advice. So
Lil Wayne is out of his mind.
Right. So let him think what he thinks. I don't think he's going to be influencing that many people, hopefully.
Right.
So yeah, for the FUBU platinum package, do what you want to do with that, I guess.
Yeah, I didn't think this was one of the stronger updates of the season, but like Steve sort of said last week, Jost and Che are at a point in their tenure where like even the ones that aren't as good as the rest are still really good. So definitely wasn't bad, but I didn't think it was as good as some of the others we've seen. One thing that I wanted to mention that I haven't really hit on in any of our discussions so far is this thing that Colin always does when he's setting up a joke. If it's about a specific person, it's Jared Kushner, who looks like blah 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 blah, and he does it about every single person he tells a joke about.
Oh,
And
he
I
only
just
does it
really-
about Mitch McConnell. That's something that he's reserved for Mitch McConnell because he looks like the villain in a classical horror movie. But he's branching out now. That was the big thing tonight, is that he's taken that goof and he's now going to take on any awkward looking, dark political figure.
Mhm. I
Yeah.
feel like I've heard him do it about people other than McConnell.
Yeah.
You have,
Okay.
Catherine.
Maybe I'm in
Yeah.
left field, but I
You
thought it was
have.
just
I
a
mean,
Mitch McConnell. thing.
McConnell is definitely more prevalent. But yeah,
Think
it's,
of all
it's
the
just,
lawyers and doctors that Trump has had that are eccentric. What about that hot air
yeah,
balloon
the
guy?
Muppet Doctor.
Muppet doctor, hot air balloon lawyer.
But it's this specific thing where they cut to Colin and
Mhm.
the heads up graphic of the person
Mhm.
in an obviously weird pose, that the second that he taps into what he sees when he looks at this person, you're like, yeah, it's all there on the screen. There's a very specific little beat he does when setting up that joke. So even though Pete Davidson has goofed on pretty much everyone in the administration at some point, and
Right.
of course they mock these people, that one particular format I think has been reserved for maybe just a very select few politicians that
Yeah.
are particularly creepy.
Like a
Yeah.
couple weeks ago, it was like President and active bioweapon Donald Trump, which is a little bit different format. You are right.
Sure.
But-
It's like Mitch McConnell, who
Right. Who looks like
is
a
watching
turtle.
a carriage go down a hill or something like that. Like
Right.
it's a very there's something a little more precise about
Yes.
the Mitch McConnell stuff. Anyways,
That's fair.
we've definitely gone deep on that.
Nonetheless, it's this little touch that I always really
Mhm.
appreciate, and I think that those are really
Yeah, it's
well
good.
written, and it's a great way to just put a joke at the beginning of a joke,
Mhm.
and just something that Colin does that I wanted to call out as something that I think is a big win. So, John, how'd you feel about Weekend Update?
Um, I'm not sure if I'm being 100% objective because I didn't think this was their best, but I'll be the first to admit that at this point, I could feel myself hitting my wall for like overt political statements. I'm all for like goofing on the politics, but it seems like there was just so much campaigning going on from Jost and Che in the midst of all this that always pulls me right out. Cause I'm like, just make the jokes. Like the jokes will say the truth about the situation. If you just make good jokes, why do you have to telegraph what you want us to do? Like not everyone here is a US voter and wants to be beaten over the head with that. So for me, this was the point in the show where I was really feeling like that was just coming on a little too strong. I get it. It's the week before the election. I get it. You know, Catherine, you've obviously shown tonight that people have stakes, you know, like people, the outcome of this is going to be very momentous to people. So I get why everyone's worked up, but for me personally, I just felt like I just don't need that. Goof on the politicians, do what comedians do, take them down a peg, but stop telling me what I'm supposed to think. Just, you know, like let's have some fun at these people's expense without all of the stumping. So that for me was hurting it, but I don't think that the quality of the writing was bad. And I don't think that there was anything that really fell flat in particular. So I don't think that it was bad. It wasn't connecting with me because I don't have the same view of US politics as people in the bubble are going to have with it.
Right. I mean, I think that's fair. It's definitely a very politically heavy show, you know, and hopefully, you know, in a few weeks we'll be able to let a little bit of that go, but we'll see.
You know, it's funny. You know. Back in 2016, I basically went on the same rant a couple weeks before the election. I'm like, I've had enough of this. I can't wait for the election to be over so SNL can get back to being SNL and we can leave all this heavy-handed politics behind. And for 4 years, waiting. I've been watching like the grandest temper tantrum ever thrown by a nation unfolding on SNL week over week. And I don't have 4 more years of it in me either. So see how it goes.
Yeah.
Stroll to those polls. That's all I got to say.
Stroll to the polls. Yeah, please vote. So our first and only feature, actually, Baby Yoda is back and he ain't friends with Baby Groot. So, Steve, did you like this second appearance of Baby Yoda?
Yeah. Surprised that he would come back. I mean, he's just so not cute in this form. And yeah, like it just hurts to look at him. So, hey, this is, you know, the kind of ballsy stuff that Kyle is known for. So I shouldn't be surprised. It did hit me on this occasion that this is kind of like Kyle's version of Gumby. You know, obviously the green skin helps with the comparison. But when you think about what Eddie Murphy was doing, you know, he was taking a wholesome, lovable character that is so cute and all the kids loved, but in behind the scenes, he was, you know, kind of his fame has gone to his head. He's really rough around the edges and
just irredeemable.
Yeah, just a diva of a large scale. So I feel like he's taking a similar approach to making a behind the scenes Baby Yoda that's kind of like, you know, like what you would imagine Justin Bieber to be like, or any of these like Nickelodeon, Disney, Mickey Mouse Club kids. It's
YouTubers.
The YouTuber influencers and all these people sliding into your DMs.
I was fine with Baby Yoda the first time he was on. I didn't love it. I was just sort of like, yeah, that was fine. This one I thought was a big improvement. It might have something to do with just I knew more what to expect from it this time. So I kind of, as he came out, you know, I knew what I was getting into. There was no having to like kind of onboard me to it. But this just felt stronger. I was more on board with it for whatever reason. And just really nailing those, you know, sort of, I don't even know what, is it like a Gen Z TikToker personality? Is that what it is? I don't know. You know, the kids that are annoying. I thought, Kyle did a great job with it. So this one I thought was a big improvement. And now that I've seen that, I would like to see Baby Yoda, a few more times. I'd be down for it. So, John, what'd you think?
Um, I hate that this was such a big improvement over the original and has genuine merit in the writing, because I've decided that I hate this Weekend Update feature. And there's very little on SNL that I genuinely hate. But I believe very strongly in my heart that this is the wrong approach for this joke. I feel like this should be a puppet, and I feel like it should be Mikey Day under the desk. And I feel like the same kind of dialogue, but delivered by something that is small and cute and adorable, but acting baller and fronting and starting beefs and, doing all of this, young buck crap. I think it would play so much better if it wasn't this distracting, huge prosthetic on top of Kyle with his beady little eyes, which betray the Baby Yoda character. Because if they could make this character cute, to me, the joke would make so much more sense. But this thing comes out, and I think that the joke is that in real life, like, Baby Yoda is just some sort of like weird, grotesque thing. Like, it's hard for me to separate what I'm seeing on screen from the character, that I think it would be really hilarious to hear vulgarities come out of his mouth. That little baby puppet. If they had a low rent version of that delivering these same kind of stupidity, I think it'd be brilliant.
I hadn't considered that, but I do think that it would be an improvement if they could get a puppet or even just the little animated version of him. So yeah, very interesting takes on Baby Yoda then. Let's keep going. The fourth installment of Mulaney's signature New York themed musical opus takes us into the back of a Times Square souvenir shop with a cameo from, of course, Maya Rudolph. So, Steve, the fourth installment, did we need it? Did you like it? How'd you feel?
Well, I didn't hate it, and I wouldn't necessarily say it was my favorite of the four. I don't think we're going to get the heights ever again that we saw in the first one or two. I mean, I really love the bodega. I really love the diner. This one, it was still a lot of fun. You could tell it's a bit smaller scale. That's one thing they have working against it with COVID and all the restrictions. They can't one up the last one like they've been trying to do.
True.
So it kind of doesn't really stand a chance, because that really was the challenge they were giving themselves when the world was still spinning.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was a little bit different. Like, they had to, they completely forgot about the underwear after a while, and they had to really just
remember what started all this?
Yeah. Which almost made it like a whole new meta joke. Is like, yeah, this is what we were doing, remember?
It wasn't the strongest setup of the four. Diner lobster, we get it. Bodega bathroom, gross. Airport sushi, how dare you? Times Square underwear, is it as immediately like, oh God, how, it's not as immediately
we've all had this
offensive.
experience of being faced with having to buy underwear. Yeah. No, you're right. So, it's not quite as much of a truism.
Yeah.
Right. It did. Right. So it wasn't as striking of a setup and didn't leave as many great specifics as something like Diner Lobster. But I was having fun with it. I think we were sort of ready to say 3 is good, let's end it. But with the year we've had, give me some more. It's, whatever it is, it's going to be a fun time. So I'm here for it. So even though it wasn't, I think it's probably the weakest of the 4, I still had a good time with it. And I still liked it. Some of the things that were great was, like you said, Chloe, I think, stole the show. I think she was a big standout in this one. And then a cute little moment where John Mulaney counted them all into the little ending part. I liked that. That was just adorable. So yeah, not as strong, but I had a good time. John?
They work so hard to make these special. And the only critique I can really offer is the same one I've offered since the second one, which is without the surprise of them going all out right after update and just giving you this unexpected treat of the biggest sketch that they're capable of producing and bringing down the house without the surprise of it.
Mm-hmm.
It can't be as fun, and now we have anticipation because we're expecting it to come back. And so now
Mhm.
it's so inevitable that it doesn't feel as grand. And I think you guys are right that, no wire work, like there's certain things that they just can't do. They don't have sets ascending out of the way to make room for
Right.
there just isn't as much theatrics that they can bake into this. So, yeah, it's kind of hard to just keep one-upping yourself when they already shot so high on the first one. When you're
Mhm.
already at the top, what can you do? Um, so I would have been happy to have it be left as a trilogy if they'd come back and they'd stuff the back half of this with just tried and true Mulaney type, specific,
Mhm.
oddly dark but disarmingly charming type of heady dialogue rich sketches. If they'd given us a back half full of that, I would have been happy to start a new tradition of let's just turn out some really great sketch comedy when Mulaney comes, rather than feel like we have to keep doing this because the fans
Mhm.
expect it. But I totally understand it. If they didn't do it, everyone on the internet would be screaming and the world's already
Right.
burning. We do not need another excuse for riots. So you got to give them another one. And honestly, in the midst of COVID, there was a story. As much as it was kind of a shoehorn kind of scenario, what they ended up singing about was all pretty darn inspired. It was, it it had merit as a
Mhm.
bunch of people on top of their game creating good material. It'll always live in the shadow and there's no way around it.
Right.
So I'll always be split on these, but I still appreciate the try and the effort of it all.
Mhm. Yeah, another thing that I think is sort of starting to work against them is that the songs are not as recognizable anymore.
Mm,
Um,
true.
so
And didn't they go back to Les Mis in this
they
one at one
did.
point? Yeah. So
Yeah,
sweet.
they ended with Les Mis again.
Yeah.
Uh, which it is a little, they've already done it, but it was nice because it was very immediately recognizable. Some of these other ones, I don't know what they were based on. I'm not the biggest Broadway person, uh,
Mhm.
but I do like Broadway, so I consider myself, fairly knowledgeable. So I think that's in addition to the increasingly large shadow, they're also sort of starting to run out of
Yeah.
immediately recognizable songs. So
Yeah. They got to dig deeper
interesting.
and deeper. And so it doesn't pay the same kind of dividends. It's true.
Right. Let's continue on to our last sketch of the night. Uncle Meme gets memed again, and to be honest, he's pissed. So, Steve, uh, did you think this was a sketch that needed to recur?
Well, it could have been something great. I could see potential in bringing this back. But if they got to hack and slash it to fit in the last
Mhm.
5 minutes of the show, uh, probably go with something else. I'd like to think maybe they didn't have any other options, and the way things went, they had no choice but to cut off practically the whole introduction and get straight to the memes right away. It definitely made the whole piece suffer. For the first time around, one of my favorite parts was watching John Mulaney try to get Pete to admit what he did, and
Right.
the simmering anger before he actually outs him. That was something that they basically had to skip just to make it fit into the time. And yeah, it just didn't work as well. It also didn't help that the memes themselves were not as funny to me. So it's not a win for
Yeah.
me.
I agree on the it's not a win part, but for a slightly different reason. In that I hadn't really liked the first one. Uh, it it was fine, but I don't think I've ever watched it again after the initial airing. I had kind of forgotten about it, so they started this up, and I was like, okay. And then luckily, someone in the audience laughed real hard to tell me that there was something I was supposed to be getting, and I said, "Oh yeah, that okay. We're doing that again. Interesting choice." So I didn't. I didn't really need another one of these, and I didn't think it had anything else to say. Um, yeah, just sort of a miss for me. Sad to end the night on a miss, but it is what it is. Uh, John, what do you think?
Yeah, this was immediately a little deflating because it said to me, "Oh, we're at the end of the show and they didn't really give us anything to breathe new life into a Mulaney outing."
Mhm.
And I was thinking back to his first time hosting. In the back half, I'm pretty sure they had switcheroo. I think they had
Mhm.
horns. I think they had just a lot of really like
Yep.
subversive, kooky material that requires, oh yeah, and then that cut for time one with Luke Null that was glorious. They
Mhm.
had fantastic material that requires Mulaney's kind of just deadpan, incredulous, a little uneasy character um, to really make them shine. And
Mhm.
it's such a he has such a great presence that you can work into sketches to make them just a little bit better, that I just didn't want them to go back and rehash something that wasn't, at least for me, wasn't a highlight of his previous outings either. This is
Right.
one for the kids, for the meme generation. I don't know, maybe Catherine, you fall into that, but I certainly don't. Like it's not what drives me.
Based on the internet, I don't think that they liked it either.
Yeah.
So
So, yeah, it made the show go out on a whimper, and I wanted one win. I wanted someone to say we gotta at least do one really inspired thing and put Mulaney to good use that feels fresh, so that at the end of it we can say, well, we got some of the hits, right? It, like any good
Mhm.
concert, they're gonna play some of their hits, but they're gonna weave in some of the new stuff and try and warm you up to that. I just wanted something a little fresher, and I feel like at the end of this one, I had to come to terms with the fact that we just aren't getting that on a Mulaney outing now. We're just getting what
Yeah.
we know we're getting and no more.
Yeah, that's a good observation because, like, as you were saying that, I was looking back through the rundown here, and it is mostly, you know, rehashes of stuff we've seen Mulaney do before. There were really only 2 sort of new things, so,
Mhm.
uh, that's a good point. But it's the end of our rundown, so let's get into our overall thoughts. John, how about you go first with the moment of the night?
I gotta give it to Chloe Fineman just taking over that whole musical sketch with 10 seconds of incredibly, um, just 100% committed performance. You know, her whole body was in it. She was
Mhm.
she just had like she put some stank on it, and just like her voice had like some growl, and she just really inhabited that character for 10 seconds. And it's just really nice to see her again prove that she's not a one trick pony, that she's got a lot that she's bringing to the show.
Yeah, I think that's a good choice. I'm a little torn between, the missed high five and the uncle meme that was really great, accidentally,
Mhm.
um, and the Nazi joke at the beginning.
Oh, we fought the Nazis. Well, we're trying to fight the new Nazis if you get out of the way and stop voting for people you saw in between.
And since Uncle Meme overall wasn't as much of a win, I'm gonna go with the Nazi joke. I think that one, it spoke to me on a personal level, and I thought it was just a really, really great joke. So that one has made me really giggle every time.
Very
Steve,
good.
what's your moment?
I have a special moment. There was a few moments all clustered from the same spot that I was wondering what I would give it to. It was all essentially the same stuff. It was the birds with their little hands or
Mm.
feet or whatever you call them, their appendages, doing things that birds don't do. I decided to go with the glass cutting shot.
Sure.
The little bird foot holding that, and just the stiffness, the clear holding of a stick with a bird foot on the end, like so hastily done. I loved it. It was funny. Nobody was fooled, and it was great.
Yeah, those were fun little things like the bird with the gun and stuff. Those were all pretty funny shots.
Yeah.
So, fair enough. Let's talk about the best sketch. John?
I don't think I've ever given it to a Cinema Classics before, but I think I'm gonna tonight.
Interesting.
Usually the Cinema Classics, they're usually kind of a one joke sketch. Like there's one fun observation, but they usually can't go too far with it. And that's why it's nice that you can always just cut it when it loses steam and go back to Keenan for one kind of capper joke. This one, I felt like by embracing the absurd, they were able to get a lot more out of that goof of, well, how do you make birds scary? And how is it that anyone watches the birds today and still feels that there's any legit menace and can suspend their disbelief? I really, really like that observation. And for Mulaney to, again, do what he does, which is observe and articulate all the stupidity in the world around him in such detail. Having him in the mix, I think really made this one shine a little bit more too. And that little diversion where they're recognizing that there's a dysfunctional social dynamic going on between the birds, the turtles, and the sandwiches. And as soon as you're trying to wrap your head around the idea that they've tapped into what's causing these things to, be so self-destructive, they're like, and now the sandwiches are flying. And it's just like, what were you guys smoking when you were laying all this out? But I think the end result was just goofy and a heck of a lot of fun. So I'll give it to that.
Very good. I'm going to give it to Strolling to the Polls. I thought that one was really exceptional. Been stuck in my head all day, and just a good, funny social commentary going on. So that's what it is. Steve, what's your best?
I'm siding with John on the Cinema Classics Birds. It was so great. And as I was saying, there was a lot to enjoy. The premise of it, the attitude of certain characters, the wire work, and half-assed attempt at creating a bird attack. And yeah, just the weird, unpredictable direction that they decided to take it. It was interesting to see so early in the show. And sure, Halloween gets a bit strange sometimes when it comes to SNL sketches. I don't know. I just felt it was refreshing.
All right. Well, the next up is MVP. Who's it going to, John?
I'm going to give it to Chris Redd. He was involved in the writing on the Strollin' music pre-tape. He completely botched a high five with Pete Davidson in that meme sketch, which was really like,
So
I think
funny.
the funniest thing in the whole thing. And he was just doing the job. He popped up in a lot of sketches, and everything that he was offering was perfectly fine. So I think this week it's just kind of a volume thing. I don't think anyone really stole the show. I think Chloe Fineman came close with her one moment, but I think that, he did a lot of work this week. So, and I think when he really knocks one of his musical pre-tapes out of the park, it's worth noting because he turns in a lot. They do a lot of rap videos now. He really does like that genre to explore. So when there's one that I think is a cut above, I think that's worth giving him a nod on that. So yeah, good work from Chris this week.
Yeah, I was torn between Chris and Chloe. Chloe had that really breakout moment in the musical, and I thought was maybe the best part of the musical.
Yeah.
And I was leaning towards giving it to her, but John, actually, since you mentioned that Chris also wrote Strolling to the Polls, I'm back to giving it to Chris. He had a really strong showing in everything he was in, and also nailed the writing on that one. So I think he edges her out a little bit.
He was a great hire. And they could have had him a year earlier. I forget what happened there.
Oh,
but
really?
Yeah, he was on their radar, and he was pretty much signed up a season before he ended up coming in.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I remember all the talk about that.
Yeah. I'm glad that didn't break down and someone else scoop him up, because he really is good on SNL and getting better every week. So yeah, good on Chris. He's doing the job.
So Steve, do you want to make the MVP unanimous?
No, I don't.
Oh. Steve.
I mean, I think Chris was great. Him and Brian did really good on the Strolling to the Pole sketch. But I really can't overlook everything that Kate McKinnon did in this episode. She did a lot of heavy lifting. She was back as Hillary, first of all. Then she was Tippy in The Birds. She was the crazy lady in the PSA. She was the shrimp in the I Love New York underwear sketch. What are we calling that?
Yeah. Souvenir musical.
Souvenir musical.
I don't know.
Sure. She was all over the place, and everything she did stuck with me and was memorable. I felt like she takes it. And
Yeah, that's solid.
It's very fair. And now that you've made that point, I've hurt my own feelings by not picking Kate McKinnon.
Harumph.
Here we go. All right. On a scale of classic, great, decent, weak, or train wreck, how do you rate this episode? John?
Decent. I think that's an easy decent. There's not much of a back half to speak of after the musical. But we got some competent sketches, nothing that really broke the mold, and it wasn't what I wanted to see from Mulaney, but it's really hard to fault a Mulaney monologue. The Strokes landed good for me. Weekend Update was competent, and the musical, as much as they're not as inspired or exciting as they once were, you still got to tip your hat to all the effort that goes into that and how everyone was bringing their all. We already talked about Chloe, but nobody fumbled in that. Melissa, we didn't even talk about Melissa, but she finally got a chance to belt something out this season, and she definitely owned her part too. So there was enough to like in this show that even though I didn't feel it was inspired and I felt it was really heavy-handed on the political messaging, I still feel like they were doing good work. So yeah, decent down the middle.
Interesting. I think this one was an easy great. There was only one sketch that really missed for me. And then the musical was more middle of the road, but everything else was a win. So I think this one, I had no hesitations giving it a great. So
very good.
Steve, are you going to break the tie or decide it for us?
Sure. I just got to stand up for this because I did put the pants on. And I feel like if they're not in frame, then it's just a waste of my time to wear them. So I'm going to be giving it to... I'm going to be
Whose
doing...
idea was it to convert over to video? Because this is not panning out the way I expected.
I'm going to do decent. I'm doing decent, guys. I'm with you on that.
You got all worked up over a decent?
Well, yes. But I just needed to show my pants, because otherwise, why did I wear them, right?
What was it? Slightly impressive bulge? What was Pete's line there?
Modest bulge.
Modest bulge.
Yes.
Which does not apply to me. Thank you very much. I am going to give it a decent as well, because this was a bunch of really nice sketches with a couple of clunkers that bring down the whole overall episode. I think last time we had Mulaney, it was a great for me, or maybe it was the time before that. It might have even been a classic. But maybe I'm just getting used to having Mulaney there, or they've just done so much better with him. But these guys are tired. They should be
sure.
Like, it's amazing that they can make an episode that's still decent.
Yeah, you know what? For a fifth outing in a row, it's still pretty solid. Like, if you got to just look at the season and how well the show overall is firing, yeah, they're doing pretty good. You got to grant them that. Absolutely.
It's hard to write this much material 5 weeks in a row.
Absolutely.
So overall, a little bit mixed reviews, but I think for the most part, we're feeling decently positive about the fourth Mulaney outing.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure we're going to see him back for a fifth time next season.
Oh, probably this season, the way it goes. Like, he was here in the spring, right? Like, he's a 7-monther. That's Mulaney.
Well, that's a wrap. Thanks to Steve, Finn, and John Murray. And thanks as well to our most generous patrons, Sam Bowers, Neil Weinstein, Justin Gardner, Carissa Eubank, and Brian Clark. If you're enjoying our show, please subscribe on YouTube or wherever better podcasts can be found. Your subscription helps us grow, and your support is greatly appreciated. We'll be back in 1 week when SNL returns with go-to post-election ringer Dave Chappelle. But until then, this has been episode number 120 of the Saturday Night Live After Party podcast. I'm Catherine Coleman. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.